Hello. I'm going to share this link really quick and then I'm going to chat. It's been about a month since I did a podcast, and so I kind of just wanted to check in. So hang on just a second if you're watching this later on. There might be like a couple minutes of a delay. So let's see. If there's no one there, that's totally fine too, because I did this completely on a whim. Oh, there are some people watching. It just seems like it's a delay here. Say hello if you're here. In this live stream, I'm basically going to just be talking about where I'm at with my channel and just reflecting on stuff because I'm graduating with my degree in psychology in December. So I've just been reflecting a lot on what I want to do with my career. And I feel like it's been a while since I've updated you guys on my channel. So just felt like talking. Hello, we've got someone here. Probably could have typed this up beforehand, so sorry about that. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to say that as well. Sorry about the delay again. It's one of those things that's frustrating about doing a live stream is that I'm not that great at multitasking. And you don't get the link until you're live. So it's just how it works. So I posted both these links. Thank you guys so much for joining. So I'm a little bit out of practice when it comes to speaking off the cuff because I used to do live streams like this a lot. And at the very beginning of this year, 2021 in particular, I really wanted to kind of put my money where my mouth is when it comes to type and get really clear about how do I want to explain things? How do I really view these things? And so it's just been kind of an interesting journey where the reason why I even started this channel to begin with was because I wanted to connect with people and share my experiences and kind of bring type to life by talking about how it shows up in my life, things that I've noticed, things like that, and just talk about it on a deeper level. And I feel like a lot of my inferior TI has been triggered since, or like awoken, you could say, since starting this whole journey, because I could tell you any ENFJ that puts themselves out there as a public figure in any sort of way, no matter how small your following is, it's a lot to handle when you start getting a lot of people's opinions on you, like all at once. It's a lot to handle because eventually you have to figure out, what do you think about you? And what do you make of other people's opinions on you? One thing I've really learned is that you can't get too attached to what people say about you, either good or bad, and that you need to have a solid understanding of who you are, no matter what. Because if you are too attached to getting positive comments, then you'll start to get content that is seeking validation or is doing things that you think is going to please other people, and you might not actually be doing what you love. Or if you're too attached to negative comments, then you might, start to get down on yourself. And so what I've been really working toward is, what do I really want and what is it that I want to say? And I think that even just putting myself out there on YouTube in general has kind of fast-tracked that for me to where I've had to think about those things that maybe I wouldn't have thought about if I didn't expose myself to all this external feedback. So it's kind of how FE and TI can work together in that way, where the feedback can then force you to have something to think about, and vice versa. But anyway, like when I started my channel, it's like I so wanted to have these conversations and connect and all that stuff. And I was so accessible and I really put my heart out there. And then like I feel like I've had to also learn about boundaries and to what extent do I want to be accessible? How much of my life do I want to share? Because I've also had experiences where people have felt like they knew me more than they think they do, in both a negative and a positive way. So in a positive way, I've had people think that they were closer to me than they actually were and start to demand more time from me than what I felt like was necessary. And on the negative side of things, I've had people like hate my guts when they didn't know the first thing about anything that I've gone through, my character, or really anything. They just were slightly annoyed by how I said something, or maybe they disagreed with something that I said. And that happens, you know, like not everybody is going to be your cup of tea. And so I've been really just, I think, especially over the past 2 years, but even more so this year, really just thinking about how do I want to show up? And also, you know, Teddy Roosevelt has a quote, and don't know it right off the top of my head, but I know that if you've read any or if you've listened to any Brene Brown, who is a researcher who talks about vulnerability, she talks about this quote all the time, where it's like, it's not the critic who counts. And it's about being in the arena. It's about don't take any criticism from people who are not also in the arena with you. And to me, what that means is that in order for me to really take anything that anybody says about me to heart, whether it's positive or negative feedback, they need to be familiar, like with me, basically, like at a deep level. And I also am going to listen to the feedback more of the people that are also trying to make things happen in their life, and being brave and vulnerable in their life. And so I feel like when I first started my channel, which I think all of this is very like ENFJ type of pattern, but like I was really looking for people who understood me, like my most obscure types of feelings and thoughts. I really wanted people to talk with about those things. And I would get extremely excited and overly attached anytime I felt like I found someone who could understand me. And I feel like my life for like the past 5 years has just been a constant chase of like wanting that feeling of being understood and wanting that connection. And it's like things that I've wanted my whole life, to where I didn't fully know how to balance my relationship with that. So I didn't really know how to orient myself toward that, because it's so powerful. And that's kind of how it is with FE as my dominant function. How I'm able to relate to other people and wanting to have a good rapport is like so important, and wanting to be seen for who I am is so important, that I would get too eager, or I would make assessments on people too quickly, and I would let people in too quickly. And I also would take things to heart that weren't true about me. And so part of my like inferior TI processing has been like, what actually is true about me, and also what feedback is worthy feedback. And it's been about giving myself permission to trust that I know who I am and I know what works for me, and giving myself permission to have a perspective and not feel like I'm causing drama or causing any sort of issue for simply having a perspective, which I believe everybody is entitled to and allowed to have their own perspective. And I actually feel like the more that you accept that you have a perspective, it's a lot easier to get along with other people too, because I think a lot of EJs in particular, I know me as an ENFJ, because I don't feel like I'm allowed to have that perspective, then whenever I do have it, it can come off pretty defensive and I don't mean to. And it's because I'm not comfortable with my perspective. I'm not comfortable with the fact that I'm an individual with my own perspective. I'm not comfortable with the way that might make other people feel. And so there's this sort of hesitancy and this drama involved with stating my perspective, when if I were to just accept my own perspective, then it wouldn't be an issue. Let me see some of the comments. So I'm seeing someone say that they, are trying to erase personality systems from your mind. And I want to talk on that because that is the title of this video to some extent. So this isn't some big announcement of like why I don't care about personality or why I whatever. I'm always going to care. At this point, I'm always going to be interested in personality and cognitive functions. Oh yeah, here, I'll segue to that. Gosh, I have 3 things I want to say and I don't know which one to say first. I'll give you the build up and then I'll tell you what I'm up to right now. So I think a couple years ago, maybe it was a year ago, I feel like in the type community, there started to be a lot more fighting about what system you like. And I remember that was a really difficult time for me with my like inferior TI, because I don't know if it's just with the way that the internet has changed or what, but whenever I first started making videos, I feel like most people that I saw making videos were just talking simply about MBTI, something on a very basic level. And then you had to go deep into like these forums in order to find people that knew what the functions were. And so whenever I was making videos, it was like, hey, here are some things I've learned about the functions. And then it's like, I was familiar with socionics. I was familiar with all these other, like with John Beebe and like Linda Berens. I was familiar with those things, but I really was, I felt like I could talk freely. I felt like I could talk freely about what I thought the functions were, my thoughts on it. And I feel like something shifted where all of a sudden, everyone in the type community has to decide what team are they on. Are they socionics or are they 16 personalities? Which I don't think that team has a very loud cheerleading section that I've seen. Are you team socionics? Are you team MBTI? Are you Dario Nardi? Are you Linda Berens? Are you objective personality? It started to get really excessive to me, because my understanding is that we're trying to talk about 16 holistic patterns, and Carl Jung identified 8 holistic core functions of how the psyche works. He attempted to describe, in my view, he attempted to describe 8 real things, 8 real phenomenon, if you could say that. We're attempting to describe reality here. And everybody's going to have a different way of describing reality. But it doesn't mean that there's not one reality. It doesn't mean that it's like, oh, are you this system or are you this system? That doesn't make sense to me, because I'm a human and I'm experiencing certain things and I'm trying to understand what that is. And any system that can give me some type of understanding of what that is going to be helpful. But I feel like there's a lot of time spent discussing which system is right and not a lot of time spent using the tool to better yourself or to experience yourself or actually self-reflect. Because I think that we can intellectualize things and not really feel our feelings of, like, for example, the inferior function. This is a very vulnerable spot in everyone. And you can call it the demon function. You can call it something else. I really don't care. It's all the same thing. People can have different descriptions of what that thing is. And maybe Carl Jung was one of the first to identify what that thing was. I don't care what words you use to describe it. I can feel it and you can feel it. And we know, like, and this is where, so I'll continue explaining that point. But my point is that I started to get really insecure in my thinking, and I started to find myself feeling like I had to be a thinker in order to compete, or I wasn't even thinking of it as a competition, but I started to feel like people were telling me, you should create your own system, or what is your take on this? And really the thing is like, I'm not interested in sitting around and talking about what's right and what's wrong. Like, really, I'm not. I'm interested in type, and so I'm going to be thinking about how these things work. But the way that my mind works is I'll be talking to someone new, and I'll want to hear what their perspective is. And I'll ask them, how does that function show up in your life? How does that function show up in your life? And I want to hear their stories, and I want to hear like how it's actually playing out for them and what they've actually learned. And then I feel like you can learn a lot by not just thinking about the theories as something you read in a book, but as something that's dynamic and something that is unfolding in a person right in front of you or in your own life. And I think sometimes talking to other people can show you or give you a mirror of how that same pattern is unfolding in your life, because often it's a lot easier to see, like Carl Jung, when he talks about the dominant and the inferior, it's like there's this inherent contradiction or paradox in our psyche where there's this one-sidedness where our dominant is like so focused on this one thing that we are not keeping up on the slack on the other side of things. And so there's this dynamic that creates chaos internally and can manifest externally. And this, I think that we're inherently hypocritical in some way. And that's a hard pill to swallow, because we don't necessarily think that we're being hypocritical. But I think that it's so easy when you're talking to somebody else to see it. You see the pattern and you're like, yeah, that person's being a little bit crazy in that way. And it helps to be like, how am I being crazy in that same way? So let me take a look at some of the comments. Yeah, Alani says right here, I've wondered myself if I should care about MBTI or not. I do know my type, but I've been trying to figure out the tipping scale and the pros and cons. So that kind of brings me to what I've been thinking about too, is that there's a lot of talk going on about what system's right, what system's wrong. And I don't feel like that there's enough talk about how do we get the most benefit from the system, and how do we use it to improve our relationships. And so back to what I was saying earlier, I feel like something changed in the atmosphere of the community where people started to split off. And if you've been involved in forums for a while, you probably know what I mean. People started to follow one or the other in a very, I think, they're very fixated. And so this led me to feel like, I felt like the more comments I was getting of, well, what system do you use, or what are your definition? The more I felt like I had to have an answer for that. And so if you remember, some of you might remember in 2020, at the beginning of the year, I tried to do a typology reading challenge where I picked out a book for every month. But I didn't know what 2020 was going to be. And it definitely wasn't the year for like a bunch of active projects, because it was, a really insane year collectively. But I did read a lot, and I have been reading a lot. And I felt this sort of defense from my inferior TI, where I felt like I had something to prove. I felt like I had to be as assured as a thinker and have all these answers. And the more answers I find, the more I realize that, like, one, I already know what I think, and I have known for years. But and a lot of it is just giving myself permission to have the opinion and to share it. I do think that reading a lot has helped me sort of figure out how I want to explain my opinions and figure out what words to use, and be like, I'll be reading like, oh, that's a great way of explaining that. Or, just exposure helps. But makes me realize like, I don't want to be going back and forth about the definition of FE and FI. Do you know what I want to do is, I don't know if any of you are into like social justice at all, but have you seen the infighting going on? Have you seen like an NF type of culture, like how there's a huge wound of like FE and FI misunderstandings happening right now where people can't get on the same page. People that care about the same things can't work together right now. And I want us to progress as a society, and I want to use what I know about people to talk about things that are happening. Like, I'm over like explaining what FE is or what FI is. I'm still going to do it. I need to write an ebook. Like, I feel like, I'm sorry. I feel like, so in 2021, when I started Psyche Design, the podcast, it was because I was feeling like, those of you who've been following me for a while, I used to just go on YouTube whenever I would just pull out my phone whenever I had an idea and I wanted to share it because it was my only community that I had for talking about these things. And I was very haphazard with it. And I wasn't really getting a lot of my NI across, to be honest, or my TI. I was kind of just SEing it. And I kind of was like, hey, I have this thought. What do you guys think? Like, and maybe it was useful for you guys. I don't even go back and look at my videos, so I don't know. But I started to just get this feeling of like I haven't put my full self. I didn't really try that hard. Like, people were telling me they were impressed with my videos, and I was like, but I didn't ever try it that hard at all. I didn't ever really do anything I wanted to do. The thing is that I have a degree in journalism, and I had to take micro documentary classes. I am pretty skilled at video editing, but you would never know because I've never even done that. Like, there's all these things that I've wanted to do of like actually doing like a documentary about type, or like wanting to like actually edit my videos, or wanting to like actually write a script. So many things I wanted to do that I have never done because I just really liked the back and forth sort of conversation vibe that I was having, like in an FE kind of way. And like, I started to just feel like the way that I was coming off on my videos and the way that was, like, it wasn't actually getting to the root of what I really think about things. And I wasn't really delivering my ideas in a way that would make sense. And it didn't really feel like me. And so, and that's one thing I've realized, especially like anyone that puts themselves out there online is going to get a lot of comments and feedback from people. But I feel like I was doing myself a disservice by just being so, like I said, haphazard with it, but also I was only interested in like the connection part and like the starting a conversation thing. I wasn't really trying to teach. But then people were interpreting me as trying to teach. That wasn't what I was doing. And then it's like, well, I totally see how if you think I'm trying to teach, that sounds really convoluted and confusing. And so anyway, I did this podcast because I was like, I really want to just go from the beginning to end, like what I think about type, and just try and lay it all out there into something I'm proud of. And I am proud of what I've done so far with Psyche Design. But it was also kind of, it was very daunting to do. Every single episode was extremely daunting to do because I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to make sure that I was putting everything that I would ever want to say into one episode. And so I feel like, so here's a good time to say I'm doing season 2 of Psyche Design starting sometime in 2022. I don't know when, but that's why I haven't posted anything. I doubt anyone really even notices or cares, but I feel like the need to say that, yeah, after the last episode of Psyche Design I talked with a couple people who are type practitioners, and there's this really interesting online like self-awareness sort of questionnaire thing that can help people find their type, that I really like the way that they were doing it, because it is more self-discovery based rather than a test. And so, and it gives you the time to confirm whether or not you agree or disagree with whatever the pattern is. So I was interested in that, and I feel like that was a good note to end, like, I guess, season 1 of Psyche Design. And now I feel good knowing that anybody who I guess maybe wants to learn why type matters can start from the beginning and go through that for a bit. And there's still more I could do, but I do kind of miss doing more off the cuff videos, like live streams or even just me talking. And I do want to share more of that, but I'm not really quite sure how I want to. Because what I have noticed is, like, so I think with my FE and NI, like, I enjoy whenever I have a new realization about something I already know. I want to share that and connect over that and dive deeper into it. And so it can become like a whole cycle of every time I have a new realization, I'll want to explore it with someone and share it. But I'm not very great at starting at the beginning and making it simple and making it easy to understand. And so I feel like I confuse people more than I help them if all I'm doing is having these crazy realizations and then not making there be a way for people to work their way in to get to my level with me or to meet me where I'm at. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but, like, I'm not sure how helpful it actually is for me to just, oh, I had this insight, because it might not always land. So based on where I am right now, so I'm graduating in December with a degree in organizational psychology. I'm not sure how many of you guys know this, but it's like, so when I first started my channel, I was working as a journalist and I was making only $10 an hour, and I was living at my parents'. And I was really hoping that I would be able to work my way up at that job, but it just became clear to me that there was no working my way up. And I had a pretty negative experience with, like, sexual harassment. I don't want to go too into that, but, like, it was a very hard time for me. And I didn't really know what else that I wanted to do. And I ended up being, like, let go from that job because I spoke up about something. And so I was applying for all these jobs and I was so bored with all of them. And it's like, all I ever wanted to do was talk about personality. And so I felt like I didn't know how I was going to enter into a different type of career. And whenever I discovered what organizational psychology is, that's when I realized it's basically like applying psychological principles to a business sense or to an organization. So when I got into it, my first thought was, great, teaching businesses that they should give a shit about people. That sounds right up my alley. But, you know, a lot of what it is that I didn't know is teaching businesses how to exploit and manipulate people, which I'm not about that. But, you know, obviously psychology is a tool. You can use it whichever way you want. A lot of what organizational psychologists do would be, let's come up with a test that will, a personnel selection test so that we know who to hire and who not to hire. And it'll use the big five. And then, like, anyone that tests as neurotic at all, they'll just won't give them the job, which a lot of times is a problem because it might, you know, weed out disabled people. It might weed out people who are in poverty or people who are traumatized, who need the jobs the most, to be honest. I really disagree with a lot of what psychologists are doing. And whenever I got into this career, I'm like I thought about getting a sociology master's because I loved sociology in undergrad. And I talked to an advisor about it, and they were like, well, if you love Carl Jung, then you really should be doing psychology because he wasn't a sociologist. And then I get to my psychology degree, and I'm like, hey, I love Carl Jung. And like, oh, great. Well, he's not scientific. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so also, there was a time when I had to do independent study for 1 credit hour, and the advisor was like, I'm going to give you this time to research anything you want to research. And I was like, great. I want to research personality and also Carl Jung's theory. And they were like, oh, well, that's not practical for the real world. And I'm like, well, it is practical if that's what I'm going to be doing. And they're like, well, we don't know about that. So you can do something else. So, but anyway, my background with, I got into degree in 2018 and I've been slowly kicking away at it ever since then. And I'm finally going to be almost done. And I've learned a lot about leadership coaching. I've learned a lot about teamwork. I've learned a lot about creativity and like how to do workshops. Employee affect and behavior has been interesting. How do our attitudes shape how we show up in the workplace? And so basically, I've been having to learn a lot how to read psychological texts and studies and experiments and all this sort of stuff. And I feel like I have this background now where like I understand what it would look like if I were to do any sort of business coaching or any sort of consulting. And before I even went into this arena, like with my journalism and then marketing background, I had done like content strategy and vision setting and like brand strategy. So I've done similar things. I realized that's actually quite similar to business strategy because it's all about helping people set their vision and helping them figure out what their goals are and stuff like that. There's this whole area of organizational psychology that's really interesting. It's just all about organizational change. And you basically go into an organization and you audit where they're at. You figure out what their problems are and you can suggest solutions based on where they want to go. And it's a very vast sort of field where I have this thick ass book with like all these different models where it's like, if someone like wants to innovate and they're struggling with that, you might want to look at how are their procedures, how are their what's like the hierarchy like there, and is that conducive to innovation, things like that. What is the overall climate emotionally going on there? So I feel like that helped me out a lot. And another thing that I've been doing that I don't know if I mentioned or not, but in January, I started taking classes with Linda Berens, who is a type expert. I have interviewed her on my channel before. And what I can tell, like, Linda is honestly, I don't mean to be dramatic when saying this, but I feel like she's kind of the closest to young that we have right now. That's not really true. But as far as personality goes, like she's really up there. She was mentored by David Kiersey, who I believe was also David Kiersey knew Myers and Briggs. So that's all I'll say, that Linda Berens has been doing this for a very long time, and she really knows her stuff. And I'm very grateful to have been able to be mentored by her and also take her courses. This year, that's another thing I've been silently doing in the background is taking her cognitive functions course, and then also her temperaments, her 4 temperaments course. And also on top of that, I've gone to like 3 different typology conferences virtually, which is the great thing about COVID. And what I really started to understand, I thought was interesting, is, as I was saying earlier, a lot of the online stuff has been very like, oh, well, what system are you? Are you this? Are you this? Are you that? I began to realize that in these type conferences of people that actually do this for a living as practitioners, that have certifications in this and really work with people in real life, that they all understand that these patterns are holistic. They all understand that they do kind of overlap and they share with each other. And I feel like another thing is, I think we know by now in 2021 that influencer culture and the way the internet has taken over our lives has been quite toxic, because you can have people that don't know what they're talking about at all show up as an expert and tell you things like, oh, yeah, I know exactly who you are. I can tell you who you are in 30 minutes for $300. And for anyone who doesn't know who they are and really is like looking for answers quickly, of course they're going to go for that. And I think that's predatory behavior. And I think that anyone that's putting themselves out there online has a responsibility to intellectual integrity and to be building their skill. And I think that I started to realize that a lot of the people that care a lot about who's right and who's wrong don't actually have as much background as the people who don't. And I'm sorry if that's a strong statement. I'm not trying to like be dramatic with that, but let's be real. I'm dramatic. So I started to realize that the people who know more about this stuff know how complicated it is. And if you're trying to reduce it to like, I know everything that there is to know about this, then you probably don't actually know. And I feel like I've always known in my core that there was like, it's like my inferior TI, I think, had like a sense that I disagreed with certain things, but I didn't really quite trust myself to make an argument about it and to be able to hold my own. And so I think this year in particular, I've been able to connect with a lot of people who do this for a living and see how they do it. I'm in another type course right now with Angelina Bennett, who is the author of, I think the name is Shadows of Type. She's an INTJ lady based in the UK. And her book is really great for development in type. She basically took like vertical models of development, of personal development, and laid them on top of type. And she has these really great type descriptions of how the type pattern might express itself differently based on the core beliefs that the individual has about how the world works and, you know, how developed that might be and how mature that might be. I've connected with, connected with people in conferences. And so that's not all to say that I know everything that there is. Really, the main point is that nobody really knows like everything. Like this is all very complicated. And I want to have a conversation about these things without feeling the pressure to define like, I don't know. I just think that there's such a race these days. Okay, so like influencer culture has been a big part of this where people want to stand out as special and they also want a product to sell. And so there's a lot of pressure to come up with what the answer is quickly so that you can sell it, basically. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, there is no answer as like a cop out to not thinking on what it is. I'm really not. I just think that I'm just less interested in being a part of that debate of how do we know if this person is this type, or how do we know if this definition is more right than this definition? I don't think that brings us the value that we think that it brings. So that brings me to why do I care? Why do I still care about type? So that's a great question. So let me just check the comments actually really quick. Yeah, so okay, I want to comment on this really quick. Haven't you sold typing services yourself? What I'd say is clarify your definition succinctly so at least you have something to stand on when selling your services. So I am not selling typing services right now. That was something that I felt like, so basically what happened is that I started to have more and more people reaching out to me wanting me to help find their type. And the thing is so let me talk about actually definitions really quick. So I'm in a cognitive psychology class right now. And something that we were talking about that I thought was really interesting is we were talking about concepts and how concepts kind of transcend definitions, because the more specifically you try and define something, the more you're going to find an exception and the more the definition is going to fall flat. So they were talking about like a tree or like a dog. That's a concept. It does have a definition, yes. If you were to try and define a dog, like, oh, it has 4 legs, it's free, it barks. You're going to find a dog that doesn't have 4 legs. You're going to find a dog that doesn't bark. The point is that you can have a concept in your mind without it needing to follow a specific set of definition, because you're actually narrowing in and getting less and less close to knowing the root of the concept, the more you're attaching all these details to it. So I can talk about that more in another video too, because that's something that I think might be the crux of how I want to explain it more later on. But basically, I did the best way that I knew how to do typing services whenever I was doing it was just giving some of my best guess and or a ranking of, I think it's this is how likely I think it is, and these are the other types that you could check out. And I did have descriptions I wrote with it. And I think that there's nothing wrong with having a definition or a description, and there's nothing wrong with systems. I just think that we have to know what the limits of them are, and we have to use them in a way that's going to help us rather than, I guess, overanalyzing them. What was I going to say? And so, like, when I'm talking about functions, I'm talking about these 8 core concepts that were defined by Carl Jung, and I'm sharing my interpretation of them as inspired by other people that I've read and their interpretations and their descriptions of them as well. And I would say that if you want to understand what they are, if you want to really understand the essence of what they are, you can't ever read it in a book, because you have to feel it yourself. You have to experience it yourself. You have to experience it in others. I think that you have to experience it consciously, or I don't know. Like, I think that if you think about, and I've said this before, but if you think about how vast our mental capacity is and how vast the psyche's potential is, and you were to envision yourself dividing it into 8 chunks, you have to realize how vast 1/8 of your entire mental capacity is. And trying to find one word to describe it. Words are used to help us communicate concepts. Concepts supersede the word. We're using words so that we can feel this essence. So that's how I view it. And so I'm going to be offering at least some sort of consulting. Oh yeah, and with Linda Berens' system, what I really liked about her approach is how much she prioritizes self discovery, and the way that she types people is she talks with them about what their preferences might be and allows them to entertain all of the different patterns, try them on, and see what fits. And it's a process. It's a I feel like whenever I do offer any sort of type discovery session again, I want it to feel like a process where we're getting to know each other, and you're also getting to know the concept, and it's a process where you're starting to see the concepts in you. Because tying this back to why do I care? Being able to identify the concepts in my own brain has done absolute wonders for my mental health, and has helped me in making better decisions, and has avoided a lot of problems. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of or thought about the idea of just how, like, if you're able to put a name to an emotion, how it can help you process it. How if you are feeling weird and you don't know what it is, and then you're like, am I feeling humiliated, or am I feeling shameful, or am I feeling whatever? Like, I think that it can help whenever you can put a name to a phenomenon, because it gives you this sense of clarity, and it helps you process it and understand it and wield that energy. Whatever it is you're picking up on, you can wield it better because you can have a name for it and a way of categorizing it in your mind. And I really think that understanding what the 8 functions are and what that means has given me a deeper understanding of my own psyche and how it works. And I think that it has allowed me to notice when I'm in denial and allowed me to notice when I'm resisting different aspects of myself. Um, in a way where it helps me find like emotional stability. And like I feel like the past couple of years I've been very focused on trying to listen to the voices of my SE and TI. And the more and more I do that, the less I feel like I'm acting like a caricature of myself, and the more I feel like I trust myself and I know myself, and I know that I'm not going to like I feel like okay, we have this inherent contradiction in our psyche, like I was talking about, and it's always wobbly, and everybody's dealing with this wobble feeling. And I think that putting a name to it can help you ride those waves. And I feel like for the very first time that I'm like gliding on these still waters. And I know that that's not always going to last, but I really do feel that way. And I think that that's been the most valuable aspect of type, because the thing is, with my SE and TI, I've gotten to the place right now, and I'm not trying to get too emotional about it, but whatever, I'm an ENFJ. I'm trying to give myself more permission to actually be myself as well and not always try to transcend myself. But I'm like getting to this point where like I trust that I can handle anything that comes to me. And um I if something hard, if a difficult challenge comes my way and I'm not sure how I'm going to approach it, I trust that I can handle it. I will move my energy toward that thing, and I'll also invest the necessary brain power on that thing. What I've noticed with extroverted feeling and introverted thinking, whenever it's going back and forth, is that I can waste a lot of my energy worrying about what to do, worrying about what the result will be and what others will think of the result, and double checking all of my thoughts up against everyone else's thoughts to make sure that I'm refining my thoughts enough, and to make sure that I'm doing it right, to make sure that I'm helping. And if I simply just trust myself that I can handle it, I can handle life with both my SE and my TI, then it ends up, actually taking less energy, and I can have more energy to use toward the things that I want. Um, Let me take a look at the comments. So this comment says, what I don't like about niche systems is that there isn't enough real people using them. You're too dependent on some random person's opinions, but the system isn't filtered through reality. I completely agree. And this doesn't just say that I don't get value from other people's opinions on this, because I really do. But I think that as opposed to learning to work together and discuss what's true and what's not true, we're instead compartmentalizing ourselves and branding ourselves and trying to become an influencer. And I've done it. I'm not blaming anyone else. So this is not some shade toward anyone else. Like, I just think that this is the pressure that we're feeling from society right now, is to trademark your shit and to get people to care. And I guess I just think like we're all human. We're all having the same human experience. So, yeah, like, so why do I care about type? It's like, I feel like I'm able to get along with people better. I feel like I'm able to get along with myself better. And I feel like really one of the main things is, so I'm currently reading this book by Ezra Klein, who is the former editor in chief of Vox. I think he's an INFJ. I think he's brilliant. Anyway, he has this book about why are we polarized, and I've only read like the first chapter or first couple of chapters of it. But he's talking about how polarized we are politically right now, and a lot of why that is actually, and I'm mostly talking about America right now, but I feel like the similar theme is happening everywhere from what I understand, like with Brexit and things like that. But basically, gosh, what was I saying? There was this effort in the mid-1900s that political parties like Democrat and Republican, there was this effort to make them more cohesive based on a single value or like a value system or an ideology. And there was this effort that if political parties were more authentic with what they stood for, then it would be helping people give more of an accurate stance on what they're voting for. So there was this push for Democrats to be even more Democrat and Republicans to be even more Republican. And the idea is that it would help the individual know that their values were going to be accounted for. But basically, while it's like the argument that was being made in this book is that it's not necessarily that we have gotten more polarized. It's just that we have self-identified and self-categorized to the point where we're having a harder time even seeing our differences. And I'm not fully done with the book, so there might be more to it. But I thought that was even just really interesting to think about, because I think with personality type as well, if we're self-categorizing and we're overly identifying with our type, then it can make it harder to understand the other types as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have less in common. It just means that we're more aware of what we're standing for. And as far as politically, I feel like there's a lot of issues where people aren't incentivized to work together because politicians are incentivized to make their base happy, which often, in order to make your base happy, you have to be polarized. You have to be one-sided. And Carl Jung talks a lot about the one-sidedness and how life is full of all these polarities and the duality of things. And there's a lot of problems that can happen if you're weighing too much of your conscious energy on one side over the other, because then you're leaving these blind spots where a lot of shit can happen. So I think that like we're in this weird point, and like we all know that like everyone's probably sick of being like, oh, these crazy times, right? But like we're in a really weird point right now. I think that a lot of people are spiritually confused, personally confused. I don't think that we really know where we're going. And I honestly believe that this tool of the 8 cognitive functions and personality type can help us have a sense of what our origin point is when it comes to our psyche. Like, what are our default assumptions, and how can we understand that there is another reality? I think that if without this awareness, like if we're just conscious of our dominant and maybe our auxiliary on a good day, we think that that's reality. We think that that's everything that there is. And if other people don't get that, then we think that they're stupid and we think that they're bad people. When sometimes these are the very people that have something to teach us and have something that can actually help us with our blind spots. So I think that having this awareness of how we are different, and also I think that a big part of it is knowing how vast reality actually is and how vast our capacity actually is. And also the realization that we're actually only being a sliver of our potential. Because if in theory we have the potential to be all 8 functions, then we're only at the tip of the iceberg. And I'm not saying that it's like a race to getting there, because we don't have to do that, because we're all different for a reason. But I do think that it's worth knowing that, the way I'm experiencing life right now is not all that there is. And I might be seeing things about what's happening right now that are very, very real. And somebody else might not be focused on that at all. And I think that, I mean, I've said this a million times in every which way, and I know that this isn't really new. Like, if you're someone that also cares about type, you know this as well. But I do think that it can be forgotten because a lot of times people, when they come to type, it's like you've had experiences of people looking at you like you're crazy for literally just using your dominant function. I don't care how rare your type is. Everybody has had the experience of someone treating them like they have 6 heads just for simply using your dominant function. And it's disorienting. And I think it's really important for people to recognize that the way that they are is valid and okay, and that there is space for that. And I think that a lot of what type is gives people that space to identify with the things that are your natural tendencies and are your talents. And I think that that's amazing. But I think that if you stop there, then instead, then you have all these people that have even more confidence and audacity that they're right without moving past that. I think that that could be an issue. And I see it, whether or not it's with type or with other things. I think that there's this whole theme of people wanting to identify with labels these days, where let me see, how do I want to word this? I feel like there's just a lot, there's a whole theme of like, even, okay, there was a trend on Twitter not long ago about like red flags. And a lot of the red flags were like actual red flags, like for abusers. And then some of the red flags were simply just someone being different than you. Of like, oh, red flag when someone talks about themselves, or when someone tells a story about them whenever you told a story about you, red flag. When sometimes that could just be like maybe the person's extroverted, or maybe they're, like maybe they're using extroverted feeling even. Like a lot of times people think that things are red flags simply because they counteract their view. And I really think that understanding the 8 cognitive functions and also I think type shows you your orientation to the psyche and to everybody else. But it doesn't have to be an identity, and it doesn't have to be where you are forever. But if you think of the 8 functions as a map of the psyche, then you can navigate uncertainty. You can navigate differences between people. And even in your own experiences, you can have a name to a phenomenon. Like if you are in an experience where you feel stretched thin and you feel like the context of the situation that you're in is demanding some effort from you that is not natural to your preferred functions, then you can at least have a name for what it is that you're struggling with. You at least have a concept that you can go with, rather than thinking, I'm stupid, I'm broken, nobody else deals with this, because everybody deals with it. Everybody feels broken. Like, and that's what I think is really beautiful, is it's like we all have a dominant, we all have an inferior. And that inferior, I'm going to be talking about the inferior a lot more, because I think that it's really the crux of it. The more I learn about it and think about it, that inferior is like, it's like a wounded puppy that you're trying to take care of, basically. It's something that's always with you and is always pervasive. Like, even whenever I was describing earlier, I went through this whole crisis of trying to figure out, how do I want to explain this? What are my systems? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, I've always known all along. I've always had my opinion all along. It's like, I just don't trust myself. That's the hard part. It's not that I don't have critical thinking skills, or that I don't think about things or whatever. It's that I don't feel safe being that. And that's the thing, is that we all are dealing with this with our inferior, where it's like you feel it so deeply and it's so pervasive, but it's so vulnerable and it's so hard to accept. So Anyway, I'm going to take a look at some of the comments right now. So, yeah, this says people think normal behaviors are red flags because they differ from the most recent pop psych meme they scrolled. Yes, I feel like that there's something going on with like pop psychology these days. I don't know. I don't have enough like full thoughts on that, but I absolutely know what you mean. I think I saw someone talk about it as like over therapied, and I want everyone to have access to therapy and all of that, but it's like I almost want to say it's too much FI, not enough TI when it comes to processing things. Um, it's like validating all of the trauma that you went through, but not necessarily giving you the tools to break through your delusions about it. And I think that you need both. And I think that we've also probably been in a state where we haven't felt safe validating ourselves. And so that is needed. I think basically, if you're thinking about how Carl Jung talks about all of these the duality and the polarities, I think that we are in a wobbly place right now, you could say, with society. Um, there, things are wobbly, basically. It's like I think that there has been a hold where thinking has had a hold on a lot of culture, and then now feeling is like lashing back with all these like protests and like uh, safe spaces and all this stuff. And it's interesting. And then we're having a lot of thinking be like, well, wait a minute, you guys are not making any sense at all. It's like feeling is like, I'm so sick of your bullshit that I don't need to make sense right now. It's and then I think that, you know, on the same side of things with sensing and intuition, there's been a huge pull of like everything people have like, well, only if this makes sense, only if you have proof. I'm only going to believe it if it has proof. But then now we're seeing all the like shadowy intuition type of stuff, like bouncing back, like with conspiracy theories and people believing things with no proof at all. And it's like we've got to find some sort of balance here. Um, and I think that the best way to create a society where we aren't polarized is to get less polarized individually. And I think that that's really, if I were to tie up everything that I've said in a bow, that's kind of what I'm all about and what I'm interested in. Okay, can you guys hear me? And you're going to have to tell me when the last thing that I said, because I was really going on a whole thing. So tell me the last thing I said. Okay. Please. Does anyone with better SI than me, can you tell me? Seven minutes ago. Does anyone remember the very last sentence that I said verbatim? I'm just joking. I think, okay, so I was talking about an example of myself. Okay. I'll just, okay. So what I was talking about, and, okay. I was talking about how, I was in this course where it was talking about how your auxiliary function can operate either as a trusted advisor or as a servant. Did I mention that? Do you guys remember that? Can someone say yes or no? That might have been the whole point that I was getting at. So you heard what I was saying about FI and TI therapy. I'm just going to go into that point. So anyway, this whole idea about what kind of boss or hero or CEO is your dominant function, because your auxiliary function can be can operate as like a servant or a trusted advisor based on how welcoming and open your dominant function is. And I think that when I talked about this before about how your dominant function can be at its worst kind of like a tyrant that is pushing all your other parts of you around. And I was talking about how, okay, so maybe you guys didn't hear that part. I was talking about how your inferior function can be kind of like a slave to your dominant and be in terrible working conditions. And I was providing an example of myself as an ENFJ. So the sort of terrible working conditions that I was under with my TI, or how that would work is if FE is like, well, it's not my place to judge, or who am I to judge, or I don't want to be rude, or I'm going to give this person the benefit of the doubt, or the thing is, okay, yeah. So what I was saying is like, I have opinions and I've always been a critical thinker. That's not been what the issue is. What the issue is that I was blaming myself for judging and thinking that I didn't have room to judge or that it wasn't my place to judge. And so what happens is then it's like my TI is in these terrible working conditions and my TI is mad that it doesn't get any sort of breathing room. And then it's like, what I was describing, and it's not going to sound as good this time as it did the first time, is how the more my FE is like, oh, it's not my place to judge, then the more my actual judgments are like primal, cruel, underneath the surface, and seeping through in a way that it actually, I think, comes off worse. To where I've noticed from the more that I've given my TI some breathing room and the more that I've accepted that I have it, because I'll tell you, I've probably used more TI in this video than I typically let myself when it comes to certain opinions that I might have been afraid to touch. Like, I think that when an FE Dom has their TI completely under wraps, then it comes off holier than thou and judgy and pushy and bitchy. And like, oh, you must think that you're better than us, don't you? Because the thing is that we have opinions and we're not telling you. And that is scary, kind of. And that, actually, I think comes off worse. So that's kind of the dynamic that I was saying, and how like, sorry, I'm so frustrated that it stopped. There's this dynamic where, oh yeah, you know what? I bet my number one point that I was saying earlier of like, oh, if I were to tie this up in a bow, everything that I talked about, this is the number one point. I bet that wasn't recorded either. Was basically that the more chaos we have internally, then the more chaos there's going to be externally, because the parts of you that you have trapped in a cage, you're going to trap the people in a cage that represent that outside of you. And it's going to cause chaos, and it's going to cause polarization in society. And I was saying that I feel like we are over it, whatever was happening in 2020, like we're all of this drama, people not feeling safe, people, like all this stuff. Like, I'm over it. I think that what I really want to do type, and what I think that one of the main value of type is the more that you can work on your own inner chaos, then the better you're going to get on with people, and the more able you are, or the more of an ability you're going to have to be the sort of person that can handle the chaos in life. And I think that when you think about where are we going to go from here, like, because I don't think we're going to go back to like the old, I don't think we're going to return to normalcy, as people say. I think that we're in a weird time. I think I was saying earlier about how we're in a very wobbly time, about how the polarities are very wobbly, where we have like feeling and thinking going at it, sensing and intuiting going at it. Oh, and with introversion and extroversion, it's really interesting because a lot of people are like working from home now and like realizing like, oh, actually all the meetings that we were going to wasn't actually as hopeful as we thought they were. And really we were just talking and thinking that was doing work, when really we need to, give people the independence. I think that's more of an introversion type of thing. I think that we're seeing all these stories play out. And how are you going to be the sort of person that can handle that and offer your gifts? And that's where I think, like, as I was saying earlier, I think that I have reached more of a point because of type and because of how it's helped me. I've reached more of a point of, I think, mental stability where it is allowing room for your own contradiction. And I think here's the thing is that if you're using type to categorize yourself, then you aren't going to get to see your internal contradiction. But Carl Jung said that we all have this inherent contradiction that makes us basically go crazy, and it's the dominant and the inferior. And the more we're looking for, this is who I am, this is who I'm not, then the more we're going to continue that chaos internally, and the less we are going to be the sort of person that can calmly face whatever is going to happen in our life and whatever challenges are going to happen in our life. And I think that we can cling to our identities in a delusional way that makes it harder to connect with each other. But I also think that we're denying each other's reality by doubling down on our own reality. And it is mirroring this sort of chaos and polarity that's happening outside of us socially. And I think that really the main way to stabilize it, we all have to be the sort of people that can handle complexity and that can handle feeling and thinking, sensing and intuiting. Yes, and not this or that. I think we have to be the sort of people that mentally can conceptualize that and not get like triggered or frustrated or personally offended if your preferred function isn't the only one that has a voice. And it's not just feelers that think this. I know you might think that it's just like a emotional response maybe from some feelers, but like thinking types, for example, if you're not making sense or if you're not, providing a logical argument, then they're going to get really worked up. So we all get worked up. And so I'm really sorry that so wow, what a key takeaway that we almost missed. Did I not say that? I would love to hear if you guys actually thought that, if I actually said that. But anyway, I've been talking for a long time. I'm really sorry about the fact that that worked. Or that my brain hurts now. The fact that the sound turned off. So basically, long story short, Psyche Design Season 2 is coming probably next year. I am going to be focused on graduating this December with organizational psychology, and I'm going to be trying to figure out. So, okay, yeah, here's what I wanted to update on that I didn't mention. So basically, what I really love is creating conversations like this online and sharing and, establishing like group experiences. Like I want to have workshops. I want to like make content. That's what I really love. I don't want to like just become a life coach where I'm just talking to people one-on-one all the time, because I feel like I would get feeling kind of bogged down with that. And so basically the way that I think I want to do it is because so much of what I'm motivated to do, I don't think makes much money, or like I want to just share for free. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to need to figure out how am I going to use type in like a business setting, and I'm going to do some sort of like consulting or business stuff once I have this degree. And so I'm going to be having, I'm in the process of trying to develop what my consulting sessions will be. I'm probably going to have limited like type exploration sessions. I prefer just sharing content that gets people to think about their type rather than being the one telling them what I think that their type is. But I probably will still have that as an option. I'm kind of just in this phase where I don't fully know, but I'm finding myself like, I do like that I've done the podcast because I like the stream of consciousness sort of stuff, but I also feel like it's missing some of like the connection part that I used to really like about live streams like this, but then also shorter videos. So I don't know, maybe I'll do more planned live streams. So let me know what kind of videos you want to see, what kind of conversations you want to talk about, because I guess I feel like something needs to change with this channel. Like I need to like breathe some more life into it, and kind of, I feel like I've come full circle where like, I started my channel because I was having all these thoughts about type that I wanted to share, and then it started to get more serious and I had pressure on me, and I was like, I don't like that. And so I kind of stepped away, and then it's like, now I've been thinking a lot on my own that I haven't been sharing. And so it's like, now I want to share again. So, and I think I've learned a lot about boundaries and like all that sort of stuff. So I guess if anyone has any like comments, yeah, like, okay, add your own style, stay true. So that's the thing, is I think that, as I was saying earlier, some of you guys I know are a little bit like might have showed up late. I was talking earlier about how a lot of in the type community, there started to be a huge push of like, what system are you following? Or like, you should start your own system, or like all that. I just started to get not interested in that. But then I also started to feel like I had to be a thinker in order to have thoughts. Or that sounds dumb, but like I had to like be defining shit all day long for anyone to give a shit. I wanted to be defining shit. I don't care. Like, we already have lots of different books we can read and lots of resources that we can find. I don't know. Like, I want to give my take on it, but like, I hope you guys see it's like there are other things I want to do that I think are more FE that I haven't given myself permission to do. So yeah, I am trying to go find what that is. And I think that now it's like, I'm 27 now, and I first discovered type when I was 17 years old, and I first uploaded my first video when I was 20 years old. I'm grown. I feel like I'm grown. I'm not going to be, well, again, I said this already earlier in the video. I'm not trying to be dramatic. Joke's on me. I am dramatic. So that's just how I am. But anyway, it's like, I've been on this channel for a long time. I don't feel like the same person as I was. And it's a lot to feel like, I guess what I'm saying is I feel like I've learned how to temper my FE energy a little bit more. Where like I want to bring that warmness out and that connection out, but I also don't want to be like laying it all out there and like letting everyone walk over me. I don't want to. It's like a lot of like, how much do I want to share? How public do I want to be? How accessible do I want to be? And also, what do I really think? And what am I going to say if someone disagrees? Like, how certain am I of what I want to say? So, anyway, I'm just reading some of the comments right now. So, do more astrology. So, actually I've been getting like super into astrology. And I think that it's been very helpful in viewing the world as like, or seeing how things naturally go in a cycle. And it's been really grounding for me because I think that in the past I've been like very much seeking spiritual insight and like seeking answers in certain ways. And I think that one thing about developing stronger TI for me has been trusting my own discernment and also letting myself disagree with and like noticing the things that I don't like about how things are worded. And I feel like I've been going through like cycles of illusion and disillusionment back and forth, which a lot of NFs probably can relate um, to where it's like I'll go from naive, jaded, and back. It's kind of where I've been, and it's like I'm trying to feel like, okay, what's the sweet spot between that? Because like I want to have hope, but I don't want to have too much hope, and so I feel, yeah, I don't know. So that's all to say is that basically I've been putting off making this video for a while because I feel like I've been out of habit, out of practice when it comes to just speaking directly and authentically to like this audience. Because I've been really focused on like doing things like with my podcast that like takes more effort and takes more thought and I was more prepared for. And I'm eventually going to have more of a mix of like things that are longer form, things that are more thought out, and things that are more fun. Um, anyway, so yeah, the sweet spot is dead center, and I think that that's really what we're all trying to figure out is nobody's ever going to be perfectly balanced because I think what makes us unique is that we do have these inherent talents and weaknesses. But I do think that it's how do we manage this without completely breaking down? Um, how do we manage our own contradictions and the contradictions in everyone else? And how do we, yeah, and I was saying that things feel really wonky right now. I know that's like a weird way of describing it, or wobbly, I think. Just weird words that start with W. It's like, I think that everybody has to go on their own journey to figure out what that looks like for them, because even if you share the same type with someone, you might have had different experiences that pushed you in one direction over another. And I think that's really what I want to talk about on this channel is how do we like find that balance, accept ourselves, but also rise to the occasion. Like, don't push yourself. So this is funny. I'm surprised you don't get a whole bunch of NFP simps. Who's to say that I don't have a bunch of NFP simps? Just saying. Anyway. All right. Thank you guys. I think that's the way to end it. On that note, thank you guys for listening. I hope that it made sense. Let me know if there's anything that you want to talk about in the future or anything that piqued your interest. And I don't know if I'm going to be posting super regularly the rest of this year. I might pop on as like a live stream, or I might just kind of see how I feel with that. because also this year, like with school, that's another thing is like school has been taking up so much of my mind that I don't have really much time to think about other things like this. And I've been trying to do too much at once. And so a lot of this year has been like, what if I actually prioritize school and like actually like it and actually love it, or try and get the most value out of it. So I don't really have much time to do much else. But I also am like bombarded by thoughts most of the time that I want to share. And so follow me on Twitter at Meghan LeVota if you don't already, because literally Twitter is where I like, if I'm focused on something and I have a thought that's bothering me that needs to get out, I'll like tweet it and then I'll like go away and like, I like need to offload it. I think it's kind of an extroversion thing too. It's like I need to offload it or else I am distracted by my own thoughts. And so that's where I've been that's been my dumping ground basically. So thank you guys so much for listening. And also, sorry, one other thing. I'm such a J because I know it's fun to like go with the flow and ramble, but I always feel like I have to apologize for rambling, even though I can tell that it's like a good vibes. I'm always like, oh, I'm so sorry that I went on all these tangents. And it is funny. Like, I think I saw a comment earlier about like my sixth function or like demonstrative shadow NE. Like, I can do the NE thing, but then I'll like apologize for it. But if you like watch an actual NE person on a live stream, they don't necessarily apologize. Like, okay, we've got talking with famous people right here. I remember, like, I don't know if I've ever seen talking with famous people apologize for going on a tangent. So yeah, it's just kind of funny that I do that. But anyway, thank you guys for listening and have a good one.